I've got my borrowed Cameron Walker's copy just for a moment because I've got a fantastic hypnotherapist, life coach, psychotherapist, Lucia Mizonni in the audience with me. I'd like to think we've got an audience, at least they're joining me in the studio. Right, Lucia, first of all, look at the picture on the back. Yeah. I think this is quite interesting. This is Prince Harry dressed in a soldier's uniform, probably at the age of about 10 years old. What do you make of that, first of all?
Well, it's a significant picture, obviously, because of the time when his life was completely, or soon approaching the time where his life would completely change. And this is probably a time of his life that he claims not remembering. You know, he said his block started, and it's very hard for him to remember whatever it is that happened before the passing of his mother. So maybe this picture represents the good times.
So what do you make of him and his story from your professional point of view?
I've been really looking at the use of the language. I'm trying to keep my professional hat because it's very easy to step into the come on, get on with it, grow up, all these terms that I've heard. But if I keep my professional hat, I see so much dysfunction. I definitely see a process, an element of persecution complex. He's fixed in his role, and his role is almost like depicting the world like a Disney fairy tale, almost like a Marvel movie where there's this dichotomy of the good and the bad, the evil and the victim and the villain. He uses the word villains a lot. And you know, in psychology we have the term of persecutor and victim. This is a very simplistic way of seeing the world. It's a very simplistic way of seeing the people in his life, and it really goes along with this script since that age. There is the mean part and there is the good part. So he gives and he hands, metaphorically, parts. He hands a role to people. Camilla is the wicked stepmother. His father is the absent, emotionally unable to express himself dad, so he's absent. Cinderella comes into the scene through Meghan. Maybe that role was his mother's role prior to Meghan. He himself is the helpless, neglected. He talks about himself as feeling different, feeling ignored, feeling unloved. And then he has a brother from whom he probably expected support. Maybe he expected his brother to take over the role of the mother. Remember, I mean, Diana was the only emotional carer. And, you know, it's very fascinating when he talks and he speaks about wanting his father back, for example.
Yeah.
You know, you want to ask him,
did you ever have him?
Exactly.
Did you ever have a father?
Did you ever have a father?
There is a kind of blur, isn't there? There's a huge kind of blurring of the lines, I think, in so much of Harry's perception of the world between, as you say, reality and fiction. Do you believe that it all stems from this trauma of losing his mother and what that has done to him psychologically? I think the journey starts at birth. And I think the father, being who he is, maybe emotionally more suppressed and unavailable and not as affectionate as he wished he wanted him to be. Obviously, that started from the very beginning. But, you know, to be all-rounded and healthy beings, we only need one key, primary, emotionally competent carer. And that was his mother. Obviously, the attachment with her is obvious in everything he says and does. I have come to also elaborate on a hypothesis. I see a process of identification with his mother. If I use this filter, if I imagine him identifying with his mother, then some of the things he say makes much more sense. You know, he himself seeing himself fleeing away from a danger that he perceives to be real. So there is an element of delusion and disconnect with reality. He talks about fleeing away from Britain with his wife and children. And this is very similar to what was happening to Diana on a daily basis until the very last moment. Yeah. So the delusion, the inability to see the world for what it is. His filter is the filter of a victim. So these characters that he has around him are unidimensional. He cannot contemplate a reality in which each of those people is living their own trauma. They're much more complex. They have good and bad, like we all do. So Harry needs to, the way I see it, he has to go inwards. He has to reclaim the privacy that he expects his father and brother to give him once they start confronting the issue and conversing about it. He says he's had therapy and he thanks his therapist in the book. It can't have been particularly good therapy, Lucia, could it?
You see, any therapy can have a positive, outcome.
Can it have a negative outcome?
Well, the worst possible outcome is that it keeps you stuck. So I have not yet seen, and I haven't read the book yet, I haven't seen in the way he's been speaking about it a sign that he's overcoming and is becoming an adult. He's still very stuck in that position. To become an adult, it's very easy to say grow up, but from an emotional point of view, we have to do something that in therapy we call cut the cord. You need to cut the cord with your mom and your dad. What does that mean? It means that he needs to accept the father who he is, and he cannot change the father, step into an element of compassion for his father, and also gratitude. I don't see in anything that has been said any gratitude, any acknowledgement for his, what it is that he was given, what it is that it was available to him, and how he could have shifted his reality in a positive way and him become a positive operator. I mean, he said that he's doing things that are great for Britain, outside Britain, out of choosing. But right now he's fixed in this position of accuser. He has become the villain. He has made himself into the villain.
Yeah.
What does that do to the other part, the counterpart? Then he's relegated to a position of victim. This is not the necessary outset to facilitate conversation.
Do you feel sympathy for him then?
As a therapist, I can see pain. I see pain. I see all the disruptive patterns. I see dysfunction. So I feel a lot of compassion for him.
What kind of therapy do you think would help him? What would you recommend?
Definitely something that allows him to go deeper into the subconsciousness. Possibly hypnotherapy would allow him to detach and to create different meanings. I think Harry, it's not what happened to him necessarily that traumatized him, it's the meanings that he created out of those experiencing. And the meaning that comes through from all these interviews is, I am different, I was treated differently, even simply for the fact that he was the second. And I am disconnected. I'm not seen, I'm not heard.
Well, he's like the disruptive child, isn't he?
It is.
Trying to get attention in any way, shape or form. Well, I hope he calls you, Lucia Mizonni. You can find her on Twitter and Instagram, everybody. Let's just hope because I think, he is infuriating. We all look but he has that response. We respond to him like you would a disruptive and difficult child. He's infuriating. We rage at his lack of gratitude, as you say, that he's got this life of luxury and yet he doesn't seem to appreciate what he has. And yet, underneath it, we can, most of us, remember that little boy walking behind the coffin when his mother died. Lucia Mizonni, thank you so much for joining us.